Hi, this is May.
And I'm Joy.
Welcome to the QWERTY Writing Life podcast, where we have candid chats about our creative lives.
May and I are friends, writers, and creatives who want to share our endeavors out loud.
On this podcast, we're here to encourage each other, and you too,
and share tools we've discovered or made up.
So you can follow your passions with a little support. So grab your tea
or your coffee,
and let's get started. Hello, everyone. It's another week.
Welcome.
And we're very excited to be here with you today. This is a really cool episode because Joy and I get to look back and think about what this podcast has given to us because it's getting really close to our 1-year anniversary.
I think there should be cupcakes.
Yes. Well, so we're going to talk about what the podcast has kind of helped us realize or what it's given us today. But before we do that, let's talk about our creative weeks. So Joy, what did you do?
Okay, so this week I'm getting creative with my creative week. All right. So as we kind of talked about, I think it was 2 weeks ago when we kind of talked about QWERTYs in quarantine. We talked about how things and how life has been for us. And so I've had some challenges, with family, different things going on, and all of the things, including a crazy world that seems to be falling apart. All of that has kind of led to me learning some things about myself, learning some, I guess I've kind of had like some emotional breakthroughs and just personal understandings that have come through. And so where the creativity comes in isn't so much with that, but it's been with the fact that I've taken these lessons and I've tried to find creative ways to implement what I've learned into my everyday life, and how certain things I have to change the way I do certain things or approach certain things. And so it's just kind of creatively thinking through my responsibilities and my priorities and what really is most important and what maybe can be set aside for a season. So that's kind of a little different, I think, creative week, but there you have it.
No, from the very beginning it flows so well with this episode. So let me just say that from the very beginning, we talked about knowing who you are and diving into who you are and knowing these answers to these really hard questions. Do you remember that? Like from our first, when we punched out those first 5 episodes, pretty much the QWERTY challenge for all of those was look into who you are. So,
exactly.
So you are practicing what we're preaching, and I think that that's proof that, we are also evolving creatures as well, and something that worked yesterday might not work today.
All right. So May, I can't wait to hear, what about your creative week?
Oh, goodness. Yeah. I have been doing, it's like May Day or something like that. So some sort of thing that happens with my son's school. And so the assignments that are coming home are a little bit more, a little bit different than what we have been getting in the past. So in the past, we've got a lot of reading and writing and arithmetic and all that kind of stuff. And so this May Day situation, or May month or whatever it is the last 2 weeks of school. And they have sent home all of these like cultural kind of worksheets and videos and things like that on YouTube. So we've been studying, we studied pirates one day. We studied artists one day. Today we talked about escape, which I would love to do. So,
wouldn't we all?
But so the thing that I want to talk about, though, is that Cole and Clay and I had a really good time because on the art day, there was a tutorial on how to draw a popcorn box filled with popcorn, and you personified it by putting a face on it. And we actually added arms and legs on our own, which looks pretty cute. So Cole and Clay and I each drew our own popcorn picture through this tutorial, and we had a lot of fun doing it. There were a lot of laughs. There was a lot of complimentary words from the boys to each other, which was, that always makes a mama's heart feel good. So that's a big one. Another thing that I've been doing, actually, I started this today, and I hope to continue it. I know I will continue it. But I've been going through this class. This is the last week for this class. And I have started an action plan based off of the information that I've gotten the last 6 weeks from this writing class.
That's so
So
cool.
things that I know, I just like, well, I have not done this before with all of the other things. And I love the term action plan because it's like you're going to get out, you're going to take over the world with this action plan. I just really like it. So it feels good. It feels really good.
Great. So do you already have it written? Are you still working on it or?
I'm working on it. I started going through the lessons again today,
Mhm.
and I wrote action plan on the top, and then I wrote things that I needed to do in order to. Some of the things are like get to know myself better, like to get to know my creative self better, and to make the lists of all of the likes and stuff. So I've started some of it. I know last week we talked about likes. So last week I think we talked about likes. It was either
Yeah.
last week or the week
Yeah.
before we talked about our likes list.
Hmm.
So I want to continue with the likes list. I want to also put together themes that I've gone through personally, like emotional revelations or epiphanies or things like that I've gone through personally. I want to go ahead and write those on a list. So whenever a new story comes along, I can kind of see what I can speak well to in a story or in poetry or in art in some way. So
That's awesome. And that does really tie in with last week's episode about nothing new under the sun, or is there? Because that's kind of where we
yeah.
talked about all that. So that's perfect. Definitely takes
So
intention to make sure that you set aside that time and know, ahead of time. You can plan for it ahead of time. And that's something that, neither one of us used to do. We used to have these great experiences but we hadn't set aside that time. And so then it's
yeah.
like, well, back to life as usual. Wait a
Yeah.
second, what was that again? So
Yeah,
yeah.
and I suggest doing it right after you finish the conference or you
Mhm.
finish the workshop or something like that too, because you'll lose momentum and you'll forget all of those little nuggets that you were like that your right brain like woke up to whenever you were in the class.
Yes, definitely. Yay, great tips.
Yeah. Ta-da! Okay, let's get into our topic.
All right.
Okay, so Joy and I have been doing this podcast thing for almost a year. Our first podcast came out on June the 4th, and we'll start season 2 on June the 2nd. And, that's as close as we could get to June the 4th. So we'll start season 2 on June the 2nd. But we wanted to do this episode to just talk about how we have changed as creatives and as people since we have started the podcasting, things we've learned and epiphanies that we've had, things that we've implemented into our lives because of this platform and because of you guys. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And we also have a really great call out for you guys because we want you to be a part of our season 2. Your suggestions, your hopes, your ideas that you would like us to address for the upcoming year. So stay tuned. We are good at the QWERTY Challenge. We'll give you that email address. Joy, I think, would it be okay if you gave us our first one and then we'll just like bat it back and forth?
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, so I
Great.
think probably just the very first thing, looking back, what did I learn? What all has come out of this? I think the very first thing that popped was just working together as a team. I mean, this goes beyond, obviously we've been critique partners and there's a team aspect to that, but this is something that we have creatively put together. And so, just learning that back and forth, the listening to one another's ideas, and sometimes, we've had different ideas for an episode, and it's led to either a completely different one that we actually did, or we combined our ideas together to make this really super cool episode. So I think that's just kind of neat. And as you learn more about the other person, you're also learning about yourself and just how we can work together and how we can just be a team. So that's been kind of cool.
Yeah, I think so. I think that even when we were in college and roommates and things like that, we never actually made a final product that was 50% both of us.
Mm-hmm.
And this is it. Like, this is the first thing that we've done. And I think one of the things that I've learned is how much better something can be with a partner.
Yeah.
There again, like the episode topics, where if I had something in mind and then you had something different, those two ideas put together ended up being dynamite, and also gave two very valid, important perspectives on a particular topic. So I felt like that our opinions together broadened worldviews, broadened perspectives, and really made some of these episodes just shine.
Awesome.
You've thought of a podcast. I've thought of a podcast individually too. And, so this very well could have been something completely different. We could have just been like interviews on each other's podcast. But because we put it together, we have this accountability to each other. And I found that that was really helpful for me because I couldn't slack off. You counted on me. You know what I mean? Like if
Right.
I didn't feel like editing or if I didn't feel like recording a podcast, I just had to suck it up because I had to perform in order to make this work and make this partnership work. That made me realize how I could step up to the plate. And I don't know, there's just perseverance in knowing that you were waiting for me on the other end of it. Just really gave me motivation and perseverance to push on through, even if I didn't feel like it.
Well, and I think, we've talked about that too with creativity. Like, yes, there's the aspect of, you just have to sit in the seat and do it, right? Okay, but that's not always very easy to do. And then if it's something that you're just doing on your own, you don't have that, oh, well, I have to do it for this person or whatever. And so it's easier to just be like, oh, well. But in this case, it really got us to actually get in the chair, literally.
Yeah, literally. There's something whenever you have to let somebody down.
Yeah.
Like now granted, if I was sick or something like that, we would totally work around that. And there were times where there was one time when I didn't have a voice at all.
That's true. That's true.
And we had to do some workarounds with that. But if I did have to let Joy down, then I would always go ahead and immediately schedule a fix for that. And I didn't just like leave it out in the air for maybe one day we'll do this thing.
Right.
It kept me very accountable, not only to Joy, but to myself. And also, it made me realize how hard I could push. And sometimes we need to challenge ourselves, not to burn out, but to just trust ourselves to fulfill the need. And sometimes that's hard to do whenever it's just you.
So true. So true. A lot of intentionality in it, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So another thing is I have absolutely adored learning from your passions and your experiences. Last month was a great example of that, but that's only a part of it. The whole entire year has been that. But with last month focusing on poetry, that's your thing, and so I think that it's been cool to see those things that maybe I don't know a ton about, but you do. But also just like you talked about a minute ago, we both bring to it different experiences. We both bring to it different worldviews, different focus points might be better. Like the way that we just kind of focus on topics tends to be different. And so that's just so cool because then I get to think about the same thing, but in a different way that I wouldn't have thought about otherwise. So that's been really cool for me too.
Yeah, I love that in this podcasting and also in our critique partnership as well, because your comments on the things that I give you, you sometimes you find another angle or something that just really makes the piece bloom and deepen, and I love that about our critiques as well. It's really cool.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think too that this is actually a little bit off the cuff, so it's not going to be in the outline. But I think that the podcast also let me know that us co-writing together was really going to work. That we work really well together.
That's so
And I
true.
knew that with critiquing, but then there's also this, like with critiquing, you give something that's relatively done, close to something that is done in quotation marks, and
that first round
and then
done.
exactly, you get somebody's opinion on it, and then they give it back to you, and then you fix it again. Well, that's not quite a partnership, is it? Right? So but with podcasting and this co-hosting, this is a partnership for sure, and it really made me feel very confident going into writing Finders Keepers with you, and I felt very safe, and I trusted you with our book and with our words. So
I think it's been interesting how like we we've worked together so much that I feel like we can write each other's things, and well, that really is the truth. I mean, we've written stuff, and to be perfectly honest, I don't know which one of us wrote what at this point. Like
exactly.
we've just kind of become this super writer person
Yeah, we have a
together.
very similar voice, a very similar nonfiction voice for sure. And when we were doing Finders Keepers, I was like, I don't remember if I wrote this or not. Like, I don't. We're just gonna say it's Joy. So,
Well, there would be moments that I would go back and I'd be reading and I'd be like, man, that's good. I'm going to say that was May because that sounds a lot more humble.
yeah. Well, there have been times when I came back to you and I was like, man, I just want to let you know I really loved this line, and you were like, I thought you wrote that.
You wrote that.
I was like, nope, that was totally you. And you like pat yourself on the back.
Oh, it's been an interesting ride.
Oh, yeah. So, and I guess this too is a good place to say that our podcast has been a foundation for other creative projects too. So there's Finders Keepers, and we've been able to speak in other areas too. So that was something that was really cool. And I hoped in my wildest dreams, like I hoped that that's what this would do. But I never really thought it would come true, especially in the first year.
That's
And be
true.
like, this has totally exceeded any expectation that I ever had for this first year, this first season of QWERTY Writing Life podcast. So we've spoken in creative writing classes at a college. What? Kids are listening to us? Why? So the Women in Publishing Summit for 2020, we had our own section, our own video interview with Alexa, and thousands of people watched our video and talking about critique partners. But that was all with the QWERTY Writing Life brand, and it was all because of the podcast. And oh goodness, there's so many things. We've got some really crazy interviews. People who said yes to us to interview, insane, right? So this completely exceeded all of my expectations for the first season as far as the foundational platform reach.
Yeah. And I mean, we were just looking over in preparation for next week's episode, which you guys, I hope you'll join us for. I think you'll really like some of the things that we share with you. But we literally are an international podcast. I mean, there are people from around the world listening to us, which is crazy. So crazy.
That is insane. Thank you, by the way,
yes,
all of the listeners who are in the United States and outside of the United States, domestic and international. Wow, that's amazing.
So another thing is just, having this platform that we were just talking about. Having a platform for my voice reminds me, one, that I'm not alone. Also that I have something to offer. Okay, so yes, this is our platform together, but also there's the individual aspect of just remembering that we're not alone. So like the things that we share with you guys, like beginning this episode, talking about my emotional breakthroughs and these kinds of things. I know I'm not the only person who's going through those things right now or who's having these experiences. So knowing that I can share something that I know someone else out there is feeling maybe a little alone in, hopefully that can be helpful. And also that I have something to offer. We both have these experiences and now we have an opportunity to share them with other people who can learn from some of our mistakes and also learn from some of the things that maybe we accidentally get right along the way. So,
well, my next one actually piggybacks that really, really well because I was really thankful for the opportunity to articulate the way that I feel about creative theories that have been like just rumbling around in my head for the past 10 years, observations that I've had, situations that I've experienced, and just to being able to put those things into words has been really powerful and has provided me with clarity and confidence to just be able to say it out loud in a way that I understand it. I have this really strange thing that I do where I'll just think about things and it'll just stay this jumbled mess in my mind until I get it out in paper or even use my words, but it's better on paper. So we do outlines for the podcasts, and it's just been a chance for me to journal a little bit and really understand my mind and my thoughts more so I can share them with you guys. And without that external motivation of having to have something to talk about on a podcast, everything might still be up here, you know? So I'm really thankful for that.
That's cool. Yeah. And that leads right into my next thing too, is to kind of take it a step further. We get to actually express these things, but also for me is, I've done a lot of deep digging, right? From our very first episodes. That was the whole thing, like dig deep, look inside yourself, really ask the tough questions. So really figuring out my motivations behind things, and also learning more about who I am, why I do what I do, and also why I do it, how I do it. But yeah, I mean, just thinking through the process, thinking through the approach to creativity, all of these things, and just really trying to figure out what it is that is me in the way that I do it, and then to articulate that.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I have nothing to add to that because it was perfect. So another thing the podcast has helped me with is my mindset. So I used to have this us versus them mentality on the everyday life versus my creative life. I guess what I mean by that is I was pretty bitter about the fact that I couldn't create when I wanted to all the time. And I had things like responsibilities. So I was pretty bitter about that when we started all of this a year ago. And through the creative weeks that we talk about, sometimes we don't get to actually put our fingers on a keyboard in order to create some fiction or something creative. Sometimes we don't get to paint. Sometimes I don't get to use my alcohol. Sometimes I don't get to practice playing the guitar or the ukulele or something like that. Sometimes I don't get those really intentional opportunities to do those things and that I want to do that I love. And I have had to change my mindset. And this is actually something that Joy suggested, and it has really helped me. I think it was Everyday Creativity, the episode Everyday Creativity, where I have had to change my mindset from an us versus them mentality to a combined, holistic view of life and how to insert and infuse those everyday things with creativity. And we do that anyway. We just have to recognize it. And I think that the Creative Weeks part of our podcast has really made me recognize how much creativity we actually use, even when we think we're not being creative.
So true. Yes. We challenge you to do that. Let's just make that an ongoing QWERTY challenge. Like every week, think about what's your creative thing for the week. Chime in with us. You can be sitting there going to work or whatever you're doing when you listen to the podcast and just tell us your creative week. I mean, we may not be able to hear you, but you can always email us too. We'd love to hear about
Absolutely.
it. So I think there's one more thing that just kind of stood out to me, and this goes back to what we shared just a minute ago about how we've got people all over the world literally who are listening. We have had interviews with people from all over, including Joanna Penn, all the way over in the UK. And we were able to interview with her, which is just so, so amazing. So I think that just knowing how big, but also how small our world is, I think in so many ways that has changed my mindset just when I think about the world around me and I think about people around me. I think about readers and I think about writers and I think about just people in general. it's really changed the way that I think about being a citizen of the world, really. So that's been kind of cool.
It's true. It's absolutely true. The world seems smaller every day, every single day. And the technology that is available to us in order to have an interview with somebody in another country is just insane. I can't even fathom it. I just pretend it's magic. I like it better that way.
It's true.
But yes. And also, too, we have such an opportunity to get to know people. Like, we get to know people on a personal level if we want to, in a way that we could not have done 50 years ago. So that's just something to not only celebrate, but also to practice, just getting to know people.
And to learn other cultures and other
Yes.
ways of looking at things. Because, and I think, and I hate to say that this is specific to the United States. I mean, I'm sure it's not. Like, I'm sure every country is probably this way to some extent. But I feel like in the US, we're so focused on ourselves that we don't always think about all these other countries all over the world and how they all have different traditions, and they have different things that are more important to them than what we might find is more important. And so just being able to share that stuff, where even a decade or two ago, we wouldn't have been able to do like we do today. And I think that that just fuels our just understanding of human nature even
Yes.
more. And we have so many things in common to share, which is also fascinating and so cool.
Yeah. And I think with the growth of relationships and the growth of knowledge of other people's cultures, I think that that breeds compassion. Whenever you see a face connected to another country or to another tradition, that humanizes it instead of a landmass or, you know, a flag.
And think of all the things we can learn from each other. Oh my gosh, I love
Oh
that. That totally excites me.
Oh, such creative fodder. So much creative fodder.
Yes.
Well, and in that same vein, I want to talk about how having this weekly chat with you is it keeps the passions, my creative passions, close to the surface. So before we started the podcast and before we started doing the QWERTY reports, which was through email before we did the podcast, it could be a month before I thought about my story or I thought about doing anything creative. Like, life would just kind of take over because, your full-time job is in your life every day for 9 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And you have no choice but to think about those things because they're responsibilities that you have to finish. But in today's society, your creative passions, they're not necessarily a priority unless you forcefully make them a priority. And that has to be something that you do, not something that a boss tells you to do, right? So this has been an external motivator for me as well, to keep those passions close to the surface, to keep thinking about them, to keep dwelling on them, and to keep living it as if it's a priority, because it is.
Yay. I love that so much.
Do you have any more?
I could probably keep going forever, but I think that's good. I mean, it's been an incredible year, and it's just been great to have you guys along, and we hope that it's been helpful for you.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. We hope that you have learned and expanded your views of creativity, have looked inside of yourself and found things that you didn't know about at this time last year. We are all about growth. We're all about change when it's necessary, and we always want to keep fostering that within our creative lives. Which brings us to our QWERTY challenge.
Perfect segue.
We need help.
So we want to know your favorite episodes of season 1. Okay, and we want to know just because, well, we'd like to know. It's interesting to us, but also it helps us kind of see the things that you have been able to really learn from, the things that you want to hear more about. So share your favorite moments, what you've learned along the way, what you've enjoyed us sharing, the way that we do things, what can we do better, or what would you just like to see more of in season 2, because that's right upon us. We are already working on our outline for our show episodes, And we've got some really great ideas so far, but we would like to hear your ideas. Do you want more series? Do you want more standalones? I think I really
Or
enjoyed
workshop?
workshops. I think I really enjoyed when we did the series, but I'm curious to know what you guys thought about those, like if that's a good thing or not. Is there a particular topic that you'd like us to address or something that you'd like us to revisit? And that's where those favorite episodes come in to kind of help us out. So just drop us a line and let us know. And you can do that at editorial@logosandmythospress.com. And of course, that'll be in the show notes as well, just to be a reminder for you of where you can get in touch with us.
Yeah. All right. It has been a fabulous ride. Next week, we're going to go a little bit further on this drive through memory lane and talk about specific episodes. So join us next week.
You guys have a great week.
All right. Make something, guys. Bye.
Thanks for listening until the end.
Seriously, you're a trooper.
Do you think QWERTY Writing Life is the bomb?
May, you just said the bomb.
Don't you censor me.
If you think QWERTY Writing Life rocks ice for real,
Oh my word.
please rate, review, and share us with others.
If you have questions about this week's episode or want to start a conversation, you can reach us by visiting QWERTYWritingLife.podbean.com.
We'll be back next week with more candid chats for you.